We are hosting today Brat Peter Lukianov, reader from Lakewood, who very kind.
Subdeacon.
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 Stand corrected. Sorry. And when I was preparing for this conversation, I will be doing some talking, but I mean, of course, its focus spotlight is for Brat Peter. When I was preparing for this impromptu interview, I was thinking how myopic I am, and I'm grateful for this, to be myopic. And what do I mean by this? That I worked in the 1990s with Petya's famous grandfather, Отец Valery. And I kind of took Отец Valery for granted, and we worked, I published his thing in a periodical. I was an editor of this time, and kind of nothing special. But when Father Valery was already close to his end, that's where I discovered that Father Valery, he really walks the talk. And I went to Lakewood and went for confession. It was very special because I saw the man who really put his money where his mouth was. So that's how I was.
What year was this? What year was this?
It was 2017 probably, or 2018.
What month?
2018.
Do you remember what?
Great land.
In 2018.
I would say so. Yeah,
So this was his last. That was just a few months or weeks before he died.
You can find on Patreon if you how to say, scroll down on Patreon. I put, because that's where I start. Probably started 2017 Patreon, and I put a little podcast about the trip from my car, sort of telling, sharing my experience there. So, and then Petya works for the Fund for Assistance, and he started to put his own podcasts. And he started to put his own podcast, and I thought, here is another man who doesn't get it. That's what I thought when I saw his podcast. And then he asked me and a number of other people, what do you like about Russian Church abroad? And I really steer away from this because I thought I would rather speak what I hate about Russian Church abroad. I think we have too much triumphalism about this. And here is another beauty comes here and wants me to say, what do I like about Russian Church abroad? So kind of, I ignore it, right? But then we had last week, suddenly there was this podcast about me and so on. And Petya referred me to his last episode of those podcasts that he recorded. And today I look at this last episode and really I was bored with this. It's really, I converted. And that's why another instance when I turn out to be myopic, I turn out to be not seeing the whole picture, and I'm glad about this. And particularly what I want to say about this, right? That when I was listening to this podcast, and I will share with you, I will post it also in Patreon that you might see it. Petya was saying, I like Christ. And I thought, wait a minute, I like Christ. How about this? Right? But then he unpacked this saying that I don't know Christ. And that was really terrific because that's immediately connected me with the conversation then St. Herman of Alaska had with Russian naval imperial officers. And he asked them, do you love God? And they said, yes, of course we do love God. And he said, I've been 14 years working on this and I haven't achieved this. So, and that's also what Отец Павел Великанов, who came here a couple of years ago, he talked about воцерковление. And usually воцерковление in our ROCOR or Russian, how to say, usage, it means to know when to cross yourself, to know what language to use, to be sort of belong. It's sort of rite of passage, code of behavior. But Father Отец Павел, he talked on a deeper level that this in churchness, воцерковление, it means about personal meeting with Christ. Basically, when did you get Jesus? And he gave a beautiful quote from St. Theophan the Recluse, And St. Feophane was saying that you can be bishop, but you can be in a sleeping mode. So you kind of can be bishop, you can be deacon, you can be whoever, like church professional, and then you still cannot say that I know Christ. And that's what Saint Nikolai Velimirovich said to his captors in Dachau, and they asked him, "Do you still believe in this Jesus?" And he said, "No, I don't. I don't believe. I know him." So that's really, really very, very powerful level. So, and that's something that was my takeaway from a podcast with this man, with whom you have now this great opportunity to connect and to know of him. So I'm done with my introduction part, and now would like turn to Brad Piotr, and that he would tell us all what he want regarding his show.
Thank you so much, Oche. First and foremost, thank you so much for everything that you're doing, because we wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for ROCOR Studies website. It's I have to pace myself with how much I use that, because it's turning into a bit of a narcotic, and I find myself getting addicted to your site, because we start at one article and then you link it to something else, and you'll find something else and something else and something else. Next thing you know, it's 4:30 in the morning. And, my wife thinks that I have a mistress, and that mistress is rocorstudies.org. So I have to be very careful.
That's bad.
But it's true, because I mean, honestly, everything you said is correct. And I will be honest that your initial reaction to the show was spot on. And I'm trying to think what the best way to kind of describe all of this. I've been thinking about it for 2 days, and it's just been an incredible journey, because it's not my show. This show is really, it's not about me. It's about everyone else, particularly the people that the Fund for Assistance is helping, anyone that asks for a grant per se, but also really about the donors. And that's something that I'm struggling to understand over the last year and a half that I've been working for the Fund for Assistance, because they hired me to make a movie for them back at the end of 2017, I think this was, or 18. And they said, we have to make a movie about the Fund for Assistance, and it has to be a fundraising film. It has to be about the 60th anniversary. It has to be outside of the box, et cetera, et cetera. So I knew nothing about the Fund for Assistance besides kind of the basic, they make mailers and they help in crisis situations. And then when I got there and started asking questions, I kind of just went in very skeptical. And, I don't get this. I kind of said, convince me, because I was not a donor to the Fund for Assistance. And I was sort of, I guess, recruited, you could say, by Alyona Plavshich, who has been working there for many years, but we used to work together in the EAD. So we have kind of a close relationship. So I told her right off the bat, I said, you're going to have to sell me on this, because, and I said, I'm not going to make a donation to the FFA until my wife, on her own, without being convinced, says we should donate. So it's kind of, sell me on this. And she introduced me, first off, the other thing was, she said the movie has to make money. I said, I don't know how to make money with movies. That's something I've never even thought about. I kind of did this as almost a hobby, I guess, in the Eastern American diocese. And so she says, well, we're going to sign you up for this fundraising institute, this online training institute, and they're going to teach you about fundraising so you can kind of get the hang of it. Well, I got hooked instantly. And one of the professors there, a man by the name of Jeff Brooks, he's actually Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. He's one of the top fundraising professionals in the world. I just reached out to him, in private messenger. I mean, this guy charges, I think, $1,000 an hour to consult with him. And I just reached straight out and said, Jeff, I'm Orthodox, you're Orthodox, can you help me? I'm stuck here, because I'm in the FFA and I couldn't figure it out. What's the story? Because what fundraising is all about, I thought it was about the money. At the люди, которые вечно просят деньги. There's people that are constantly, give us money. And I was like, I was annoyed almost at the FFA when I was working for them. This is the honest truth. But when I started training and understanding and spending more time with them, I realized that fundraising is really about, and quite literally the definition is to get people to realize that your organization or whatever it is that you're doing can help these people put their values into action. That's it. Every appeal, everything that we do, it comes down to, you have to get the person to understand that giving your organization money, what are they doing? You know, and so that's when this magical journey started. Because, you know, everything you start looking at, what are the action was ROCOR, you know, because we are the fund for assistance to ROCOR. So I was on this entire journey to figure out, sorry, I think my internet's something. Hold on. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but I know connection sometimes is not steady, so it's kind of.
I'm also recording the audio separately, so if I can send this to you
Okay.
later. This place in. But so anyway, I'm on this journey to discover what are the values of our donors.
Mm-hmm.
And in the course of this journey, every step of the way, I was just honestly floored, completely amazed and shocked by the donor generosity, because here I am, I'm a skeptic, right? I'm like, I'm not donating. And I'm running into these people that I've known for many years in the church, because we're a very small church, it's a very intimate community. You start talking to them and you see how much they give from their own pocket, right? And to me, I barely gave any money or give any money to my home parish, forget the FFA. And here, these are people that go beyond the call of duty, right? And I mean that. And I'm shocked. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so what unites these people? Why are they giving money? Why does the FFA work? Why is it such a successful organization? Because you keep people give over and over and over again. And so I thought it was ROCOR, right? Because just that has to be it, you know. And so we figured out that, how do we reach these people? How do we get more people onto the FFA? Well, we have to talk about our stories. So we took basically the values part and replaced that with ROCOR. You know, so if we can get them to realize that by donating to us, they can, you know, put their love and appreciation for ROCOR interaction, continue the church, our legacy, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Part of that is definitely there. But then they sent me out to the Holy Protection Skeet in Buena, New Jersey, in South Jersey. And this is when everything just completely flipped over on its head, because I come to the Skeet, and if you haven't seen the movie, there's a movie out and there's a whole campaign about this. Vladika Mitropolit Ilarion and Father Tikhon, his cell attendant at the time, were the only two monks there. I knew this place existed for a few years, but I'd never gone down there. And we were on a trip with Vladika and Father Tikhon. They said, you know, if there's anything you can do, maybe help us kind of raise some money, whatever. I said, yeah, kind of, между прочим, was born and raised in New Jersey my whole life. This place was quite literally what someone called it, a hole in the wall. The dirat, there was nothing there. And suddenly I come in there, and this is 4 years after they started, and I see this beautiful place, and I'm amazed, right? And initial reaction is I feel something there. But what that feeling is I saw a movie instantly, you know, a Steven Spielberg blockbuster film, you know, because here you are, Mitropolit Ilarion, Первый Hierarch. I sit him down for the interview, and you know, he's telling me how his role in this monastery is just a brother of the monastery, and his cell attendant, he made him the abbot. And so, you know, with their own two hands, they're restoring this monastery. I mean, this is, for someone who worked in church media, this was the juiciest story I'd ever seen in my life. And so, you know, I came back and over and over again, and so they asked for the fund for assistance to help them, and I said I jumped all over it, you know. So this was in December of 2018, okay? And weeks go by, I'm filming, and it's just not working, right? There's something's wrong, something's missing. This process, to make a long story short, lasted for, well, the film actually ultimately came out in August, okay? So this is like 8 months past the deadline. I deleted the film 2 or 3 times. What happened in the process, why I had to, you know, I actually made the blockbuster. There's people on the staff that have seen it. It's deleted, you know, it's very dramatic, and, you know, you're a metropolitan, come see him, you know, watering flowers, and it's focusing on all these external things, right, that are very photogenic. But what I missed the whole time, what I couldn't figure out, is what that feeling was inside. Because as the more I tried, I was on this like investigative journalism thing. I was like, I'm going to figure out Metropolit Ilarion. You know, it wasn't enough for me to make the perfect Steven Spielberg film. I was like, I'm going to get into the head of the first hierarchy. You know, that just totally such gall, you know, just такая наглость, простите, you know. And every time Vladika just, he played, not that he played along, he was just himself the entire time, which kind of shocked me, right? Because he was there and I said, Vladika, I'm going to come down and I want to get some footage of you at the ski. Oh, no problem, приезжай, I'm going to be here. You know, so you imagine I show up and there's Metropolit Ilarion, he's making me eggs for breakfast and we're sitting down, you know, I have all my camera equipment and I freeze every time. Like before I get there, I have these great shots in my head and you're so blown away, but you realize that nothing's happening here. There's just a few words here and there, but it's just the setting with Первый Рах, Отец Тихон, you having breakfast. And suddenly I realized that this is like a whole different ROCOR that I didn't understand. This was the ROCOR that I, as a journalist in the EAD, subconsciously was trying to hide. I guess there was, and everything, by the way, I'm saying is a very, this is all my personal opinion. This is not the opinion of the FFA or anything. This is just how I see it. But I was trying to kind of make ROCOR seem, look, let's do it like Moskva, how they do in Moscow after the reunification. You know, we make the website just like Moscow and we're kind of following their model, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I was missing what was actually going on. I was trying to create almost this illusion of ROCOR using pictures and video. And in that moment, sitting there having breakfast with Vladika, it just like everything just shattered and fell apart. And you're just sitting, your jaw drops. And little after little, you know, I realized that what was at the skid, and I've said this in several episodes, it's so simple. Christos, Christ. Because I was on this, you know, I was even doing interviews with people and asking them the same questions. How would you describe ROCOR with one word? Give me one word to describe ROCOR, one word. And everyone would say traditionalist, conservative, you know, Russian, blah, 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 blah. The only person, Vladika Ilarion, when I asked him that, didn't even blink. He just, Christ. And I realized in that moment that this man, this whole picture, I'm really trying to be, I'm trying to be very careful here because I don't want to turn this into a kult lichnosti around Vladika. I'm not trying to turn Vladika and this isn't some kind of.
I'm not doing this. I don't think you are creating any cult or anything.
For me, it was a shock.
Right.
You understand? Because I realized that my whole life, everything that I knew and thought about ROCOR was really just the external stuff. And when you get past all of these traditions and all of the and the oohs and the ahs, and you come down from the shell shock of seeing Vladika cook the eggs, right? You start to think, well, what makes this person so comfortable with the patriarch, with the synod of bishops, with priests, and with any other person? Like literally, he's the same at breakfast with me having eggs as he is with the patriarch. It's real, it's genuine, and you understand that, you know, again, I don't want to get really long-winded. This is a very long spiritual journey kind of involved in this. But at the end of the day, what kind of came out was not a perfect film, but it was a very honest film. And, you know, we kind of broke the rules in fundraising because, not that we broke the rules, but when you fundraise, there has to be a sense of urgency. We talked about this in the film. You know, what the roof is going to collapse or something happened. Nothing really happened here. Vladika just kind of asked for help. So it was a very challenging campaign. And that's why we very honestly said, you know, this is really about you. You know, you have a chance to kind of do something here. And we just showed people Vladika as he is. You know, we didn't know nothing fancy. This is your first hierarchy. At least that's what we tried to do. And every time the film got deleted, we kept trying to get rid of all that extra stuff and strip it all the way to here he is. And it kind of shocked people at first, which was interesting. I have to say that it broke like all the fundraising records for the FFA. People, the donors, again, and here's a perfect example. I'm blown away by Vladika, on this whole dynamic. And then the donors who, I mean, they raised over $100,000 in just a few weeks. It became the biggest campaign. And again, people, why? It's not because of me. I didn't do anything. It's not the film. It was Vladika. It was that simplicity, that love, that it's Christ. And that's the one thing that was kind of missing. And again, that was just the beginning of this journey. And I'm struggling. I still haven't, by this point, this is August already, almost 8 months into their 60th anniversary. I haven't produced a film for them for their 60th anniversary because I was so involved in the ski. And this, by the way, goes to show you how amazing the FFA board and the administration is to work with, because any other organization would have said, get out of here, you're crazy. But our chairman, Mark Solari, he took a chance, he took a risk. And I had a lot of very heart-to-heart conversations with him. I said, Mark, I gotta kind of finish this process. I was on this journey to discover Vlodica. And when you ultimately, at the end of the day, this journey ended with realizing that you know nothing, I know nothing. That's kind of how it ended. And I realized that I have to basically start at square one. And then from that point on, up until the show started in the beginning of November of 2019, it was just this interesting period of constantly trying to make this film. We made several drafts of this 60th anniversary film, but it was boring. The FFA, it's the church. We were saying like it was a court. In fact, there was even a trailer out there that says, put your faith into action. We took basically the definition of fundraising, changed one word, values, and put faith in there, because that's ultimately what it boiled down to. It's not ROCOR. That was the kind of the illusion that I was under. And all of these people like yourself and several of the clergymen, Vlodica, who kind of gave input on the show, because the show came out, what you're referring to is Why Do You Love ROCOR? That was the title of the show. And literally 3 episodes in, I had to hit the brakes because I realized, wait a minute, we're going down this wrong path. And at that point, this was basically the culmination of everything, saying, okay, I know nothing. And I have to be honest with myself and with the viewers that I can't teach anyone anything in the show. And I've even said it on the air, I'm the biggest idiot on the show. And that's all I'm trying to do, is not teach. I'm trying to learn and share in the process of this. And all we're talking about is what you talk about on your website, the faces of ROCOR, people that are alive, people that have reposed. What can we learn from these people? And on that kind of foundation, everything just started to explode, because then we realized that this isn't a movie that we need to make. We need to make a series, because we wanted to, in the Fund for Assistance, we realized that the only way to expand the organization is to actually talk to people about what it is that we're doing and try to learn from every example. Like we did a whole 3 series on Father Nictarios from Mexico City. This person is a living saint. You look at like what St. John of Shanghai was doing, you kind of read his life. And a perfect example, when I'm sitting there talking to Father Nictari, I'm thinking about, my grandfather wrote the book on St. John, literally was ordained by him, and every time I read it, I was always in awe, but it was very nostalgic. My love for St. John was, well, because he ordained Ziedushka. And anytime I would get to in the part in his book where he was helping people and orphans, I would kind of skip over that because it made me feel very uncomfortable, because I didn't have time for that, and I don't want to make myself feel really bad, this frail old man helping all these people. So I kind of just glossed over it. And then I sit in there in front of Father Nictari, who's this frail, tiny, like the 21st century. Again, I'm not trying to, put him on a pedestal, but you can't not see that in him. And this little man who has just working 21 hours a day gives all of himself, and somehow things work around him. And I'm sitting there every time I meet someone, a donor or someone that we're helping, I keep realizing that, for 10 years of my life working in the diocese, I made so many mistakes because I went into this thinking, like so many other people, there's all these problems in ROCOR. I'm basically a professional. I'm a specialist. I could have a doctorate in listing ROCOR's problems. I could write 4 volumes. I couldn't give you any answers or solutions. Я могу все проблемы перечислить, no problem. And then you realize you come into the FFA and you start meeting these people, and you see that these people are, there's 2 groups of people in ROCOR. The first group is who I was going into this, oh yeah, there's all these problems, but I'm not going to do anything about it besides complain and complain and complain. And then there's this whole other group in ROCOR, which at first I thought was very small, and you realize it's thousands of people who, like you said, put their money where their mouth is. And you just like, so again, sorry to get long-winded, but that's, this crazy answer, this strange answer kind of reflects the slogan of the show, one of the strangest shows on the internet, because it's just a little bit all over the place, kind of like I am right now. But that's been my experience in the FFA, and we're just trying to digest all this, and in the show present it in small, compact stories so that people can appreciate what it is that we're all about. And as I'm trying to discover, Christ and get to know him. I'm just sharing these experiences because I may not know anything. I am the biggest idiot on the show, but I meet a lot of really, really smart people. And so I'm just trying to share that experience.
I like the way that's sort of why I converted once I watched this last episode. I really like how, because you see, I said negative things, so I hope you trust me when I said positive things. So the way you presented, the way you talked, that's something that stands out and wanted me to put you under the spotlight, because in my church, in your church, we don't have much things like that happened. We don't have much things like that happening. They deserve to be emphasized. They deserve to be emphasized because this is not normal. So this is not normal. We are.
Oh, it's definitely not normal. There's nothing normal about that show.
We are rightly praised. We are rightly praised for our piety, tradition of piety. Maybe not. Piety. I cannot say that I'm a pious person. Shouldn't say things like that. But ROCOR is known for tradition of piety. But we got it. When everybody agrees on it. Let's move over. And you mentioned St. John, and I recently just realized. Wait a minute, St. John, he was in Shanghai. Shanghai was administratively divided. There was British section, French section, and Russians were laughing stocks. They didn't have even citizenship. They were on their own. And a Russian bishop became everything for them, going around the city, picking up their orphans, looking after them, building an orphanage for them. And that's what was Russian Church abroad. That's the best. That's what I can say I love about Russian Church abroad, things like that. Actually, that's what occurred to me just in this.
See, but that's the truth. That's the truth. And what happens to the devil kind of sets this trap, and that's what I'm realizing more and more every day, thanks to the people that I come in contact with, is that Father Nictarius Yangston said it perfectly, is that you fall under this illusion where you think that what we have, our mistakes, kind of the ROCOR of today is taka da всегда было. It was always like this. We start building it up in our heads that this is normal. Everyone's talking about the new normal right now after COVID. Well, it'd be nice if ROCOR comes out of this and the new normal for ROCOR is back to actual normal, real normal, not what we've created in our heads. Because on your website, why I like your website so much, and like the example you gave about St. John, another one is Archbishop Vitaly Maximenko. Here's a bishop that was quite literally starting banks to help people. Could you imagine? This is a monk, these small little guys. I hate to say this way, guys, so disrespectfully, but I mean that from the heart. And they cared so much for their people. Yeah, they made mistakes and they did all sorts of things, but he did everything he can get his hands on, from starting banks to printing presses to helping people immigrate to building St. Vladimir's church. They were servants. They served. And my grandfather was born and kind of raised at the perfect time, because when he met St. John, he met him in Shanghai. He was just literally a little boy. He was an altar boy. So and in his final sermons and some of the videos that we did, he talks about St. John. He says, not one person has such an impact on my life. And you think about that, how powerful that is, right? My grandfather had this personal connection with the saint, and not just St. John, Vladika Vierki, so many other people, Vladika Filaret. And you see, or at least I'm starting to understand, how all of these bishops, these clergymen, had such an impact on his life. They kind of made him who he is. He was kind of a product of that. And in my mind, for all these years, again, it was all nostalgia. Vladika Filaret, Vladika Vierki, I could say their names. I knew what they looked like. I had all their pictures, but I didn't really understand what did these people say. Right now we're preparing an episode on Vladika Filaret and Vladika Vierki. And at first, again, I kind of went into this like, well, I'm going to talk about Vladika Vierki. I know everything. And then you realize, like, wait a minute, you start researching what they actually talked about besides politics, besides ROCOR. Or if you read their books, there's really not a lot about ROCOR. Yeah, they talk about it in the context of their day, but everything's about the gospel. Vladika Lava, there's a story that someone told me. Someone asked Vladika Lava a question about ROCOR. I don't remember the question specifically, but Vladika Lava answered with the question. He said, "Ты живешь по-евангельски?" You know, do you live according to the gospel? And that's really what it all boils down to. That's what my grandfather, his final message, there, he didn't talk about politics or ROCOR or anything in his final sermons. It was just love, joy, suffering. You know, he talked about these basic things, and helping people was kind of the foundation of everything. You know, my last conversation with him, he said, because we have to построить новый мир. We have to kind of create this new world. We have to get out of our heads, you know, we have to get over ourselves. In one of the episodes we did recently, it's called Get Over Yourself. That's basically what he kept saying. This is a man that just tried to break himself. And if you look, as I've been studying everything he said in his life about Vladika Vierki, about Vladika Vitaly Maximenko, it's on the EAD YouTube channel, a lot of these lectures, you can see that he's following their example. In Vladika Vitaly Maximenko lecture, he says a line of Vladika Vitaly umiral stoya, meaning that he wouldn't give up. The monarch, you know, the kansa, and he tells a story how someone tried to bring him food into his kelia when he couldn't even get out of bed, and he reprimanded him and said, "Нет, monarch, you know, я буду как умирать стоя." And that was him. You see, he never gave up. You know, and he tells a story about Vladika Vierki, how he got, you know, he kind of turned into a child towards the end of his life. You know, he had, after his stroke and stuff like that. And to a certain extent, my grandfather, I mean, he had all of his mental faculties, thank God. So, but because of his ALS, because he became handicapped, he does turn into a child. And that's what we tried to show in some of these episodes we did over Pascha about what makes a good Pascha. And you see his last 3 Great Friday sermons, like you said, you saw him. That's why I asked when you saw him, because between 2016, 17, 18, as the disease progressed, his style of speaking changed. It became simpler and simpler and simpler. His voice became quieter, yet louder and louder and louder. And I would always talk to him, because I was very fortunate to be there every day with him almost for the last 6 months of his life, helping him out. So we'd have a lot of these conversations, and he would always joke. He said, "You know, it's funny, 50 years I've been saying the same exact thing, and no one listens till you're in a wheelchair." You know, and he's like, and it's true that it's really is the same message. And in his, you know, he had these master classes where he talked about the kind of the art of giving a sermon. You know, what does it take to give a sermon? And he talks about all the technical stuff, but there's one thing in there. He says one crucial element, or 2 things kind of that you can't do without. Because before you come out there, before you open your mouth, take the cross, put it on your head, and say, "Я могу только передать то, что я сам имею." It's like, it's very simple line. Because if you come out there and you're going to talk about love for 45 minutes, you could say the most beautiful things in the world, but if you do not love the people you're talking to, they will feel it. And the other thing he said, he goes, for any priest to be effective, no matter what, he goes, this one thing, you can't just do without it. Сострадательная любовь, co-suffering love. And if you think about it, it's a very interesting phrase. It's not just love, it's co-suffering love. And that's what he talked about in his final sermons. That's what he learned. You know, he begins his 2017 sermon saying that, you know, our biggest problem is that we just sell so much that we're not willing to see or understand the suffering that our neighbor's going through. He's talking to himself there. If you really watch all those sermons and you look at this man, he's understanding his suffering, because he understands that it's getting worse and worse. You watch the disease progress like week by week. So he's not an idiot. He understood that it's not going to get any better. And so he kind of goes into this, and he comes out of all of that. You know, we thought he was not going to make it that last Pascha, and God literally spit him out of the hospital. And when he came out of that, it was like this, like Moisés that came down the mountain. You know, he was just a very changed man. And he just came out and said, "Folks, you know, this is what we have to do." Like in my last conversations, is the words that keep playing over and over. It says, "Если мы об этом не будем говорить о таких вещах, пропали мы все." And he goes, "Понастроим здесь все, что хочешь." Because we were talking about, you know, projects in the parish and cathedrals, and he was on the architecture committee. And he said, "Построим все, что хочешь, зарубежной церкви." He goes, "Ну и что? В России тоже понастроили, и пришли большевики и все уничтожили." You know, they built Russia, he goes, they built everything you wanted in Russia for hundreds of years. And then the Bolsheviks came and annihilated everything. You know, so here's this man that he built, you know, I don't think anyone would argue that the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral is one of the most beautiful churches in ROCOR. You know, he kind of reached the height of priestly career right? He was literally when he died, he was the highest ranking clergyman. So he kind of maxed out, but that came with a certain amount of pride. This is something that he would regularly talk about at the end. He would constantly battle this himself, his ego, his pride, because it gets to your head after a while. You build this cathedral and everything. And then at the very end of his life, he has this amazing clarity where he says, it doesn't matter, okay, no что построили, but what are we doing here? He has one of his final sermons on Bright Monday. The point is, everybody goes, все должны подниматься выше и выше. Because if we're all just standing in the same place and not progressing spiritually, well, then what's the point? And that was just so fascinating to me, and how, again, all of this was shaped by his experiences in the church abroad. And all of these stories, part of the reason we're doing the show and a lot of these things is because I was fortunate enough to record a lot of these stories in the conversation. So these are things that I'm trying to share in a very honest and open forum, because I just didn't appreciate any of this. Even when I was with and recording these things, it's only hitting me now. I open up a recording, because when you edit these videos, you go through word by word, and everything just, again, it boils down to любите друг друга, and love each other and be kind. Everything. And that's kind of the core of the FFA. That's what everyone's trying to do here. That's what liturgy after liturgy is. That's what I didn't understand. You see, I had this thing that we need more and more social organizations, which we absolutely do. We need more, without a doubt. We need infrastructure on the ground and more. But what we really need, what will get donors, and what the donors at the FFA have, is that co-suffering love. If you have co-suffering love in your heart, you will donate everything you have. It's not a problem. And that's all we're trying to kind of learn in every single person, every single case. How do we boil this down to, what's really important here? What are our values that we share? And that's by talking to donors, to our viewers about things like that. Well, that's a show is kind of starting to take place from there.
Yeah, when I went to see Отец Valery on that trip, and the way kind of on the heart level, when he said to me, what did Jesus say to the apostles? And then it was like a pause, and he said, rejoice. And here you see the man, as you mentioned, whose conditions were progressing, and he kind of, at this point, I mean, there is impossible to lie. It's impossible to fake it. It's impossible to be, to act socially accepted or whatever. The man was, I mean, as far as I felt, 100% there. That's what it was amazing, because it was kind of essence of his whole life in front of you. So that was something very, very, special, very special, something that I'm grateful. And actually, I cannot say that I know Jesus either, that I got Jesus. I've been intellectual guy all of my life, most of my life. So yes, I know sort of in and outs about Russian Church abroad, but didn't bring me closer to Jesus. I probably, it takes me even away, maybe, with all those things, because I'm not getting purer, I'm not getting better man. But maybe if I had encountered Jesus, it was in meetings like that. That's maybe that was, I would like to believe that those meetings like this one with Отец Valery, that's when Jesus knocked on my door. That's what I want to believe. So
I know exactly literally exactly how you feel. And one of the priests that is an advisor on this show, and someone whose opinion I value very much, he said it very interestingly. He says, we don't know Christ, but we can feel and see his mercy, and in these moments, that's probably the best way to describe everything that has happened to me since I joined the FFA. Mm-hmm. By joining this organization, I went from being a complete skeptic to not only being a believer, not only willing to quite literally change my entire career, everything about this, but again, it's all about, it's just trying to see his mercy, and when you look, we were talking earlier with you, a messenger, it's все под носом. We don't realize it. It's like we have this forest behind the cathedral. There's 2.5 acres of forest right behind where Father Valery is buried.
Mhm.
And back in 2015, it was completely overgrown. And this was a place where they would throw garbage and stuff from the construction of the cathedral, old stumps. You couldn't even walk into this forest. And I took it upon myself. I said, I'm going to do this project. I'm a big nature lover, and I'm going to cut a trail through this forest. And we're going to get rid of some of this garbage. And we spent 2-3 years. I just poured my entire, like all the free time I had into this project. I wanted to make this park because I had in my idea this perfect vision of a beautifully landscaped park, professionally. It's just with рай на земле. And so, we're cutting, years go by, we clear out. I mean, it really was bad. And finally, we laid down like these beautiful gravel pathways, and, it's deluxe, right? You can walk through. And then a year went by, my grandfather reposes, and especially this year, working for the FFA, I haven't had any time to do any work there. We haven't been this busy ever with COVID. And so I didn't mow the grass or anything in this forest, right? Because usually I like it perfectly manicured. And then yesterday, it's funny, I'm on Pentecost, I'm taking my dog for a walk through this park. And every day I get more and more frustrated with these weeds, these 2.5 feet high. And I stop and I'm noticing that all these weeds started blooming. And there's like 4 or 5 different flowers that I never would have thought could possibly grow here that are now growing in these weeds. I actually took a picture, and I think we're going to do an episode about that. And all of a sudden, these little pine trees, because we don't mow, they're all of a sudden like 6 inches tall. There's basically all this new life that was under your nose. And why am I bringing this up? Because the way that I kind of treated that project and that forest was kind of the way that I looked at ROCOR, the way that I looked at life. Я всё знаю. I know exactly how this has to work. We have to cut this, we have to fix that. And all of a sudden, when you just stop, when you realize that you can't actually do anything without Christ, you start to realize, then you see things come up and you start seeing a whole different picture. You start getting a different appreciation for ROCOR, because we don't need to change ROCOR. We just need to change ourselves. We just, we need to understand ROCOR and appreciate it. And the more I read about all of these faces of ROCOR, every bishop, every priest, the more I'm understanding that I have no idea what any of this is about. And people also have this, you said it earlier, that people, I'm going to find Christ. I have this moment where I found Jesus. That's not really an Orthodox understanding. And in today's gospel, they talk about Christ going after the lost sheep. In that image, right? I was reading Vladika Avirki today, and what he's talking about. What does this mean? Christ is always out there looking for the lost sheep. So if we are the lost sheep, it's not we that find him; he finds us. And that's what you realize is that, missionary work, right? You talk a lot about missionary work on your website, and there's fantastic interviews. I was just watching the one with Father Jonah. And Father Jonah just gets it, right? Because it's not about standing there and handing out missionary pamphlets on the corner of the street and yelling and screaming, come to the Orthodox Church. That's not living the liturgy after the liturgy. It's just trying to live a life in Christ and being basically an example, right? You can't force anyone. You can't just stand there. We can talk about Christ here for hours, but people get bored because we don't know him. But if we go out there and show love, like Valery, that's what I learned at the ski. I learned more from him just by watching him than actually listening to what he said, because this is love, like in the form of a person. When Valery looks at you while you're having breakfast, you feel like he's looking at Christ. He tries to see the image of Christ in everyone. And right, it's not unique to him. There's so many people living in our church. And that's the other thing I didn't realize. I thought anyone, who's like that, there's no more St. John's, that doesn't exist. Those days are over. And again, when you see and stop and look, and you realize that, wow, it's really not that bad.
No.
You're the problem, me meaning.
I came across on the internet one piece written about Vladika Ilarion. There were in New York and Manhattan people from the Soviet Union, and somebody died in a family who happened to be baptized, so no more any other connection with the church. So they call up church synod, and it was very hot, one of those days in the middle of summer. So of course, because it was very hot, everybody was kind of like a beach style, bikini or like in their shorts. And here a priest comes. And he served memorial service or whatever, or last rite service. And then he sat at the table with them, and he noted by single, glance, by single look, didn't condemn them. It was perfectly normal for this priest, who turned out to be not just a priest, but a monk and a bishop, to sit there and be totally natural. And then I brought it up with Vladika Ilarion. I mentioned to him, Vladika, do you remember something like that? And he didn't even remember, because for him, it wasn't any scandal, nothing. It was just normal circumstances. And that's something
You
how
can look
Vladika
and not
Laver
see.
was. That's something how Vladika Laver was. I was often mad kind of inside of myself with Vladika, because I would come to his office and he would write, and nobody would believe it, that it was crafted by a metropolitan letter thanking for $5. And I said, what are you doing? We have problems here. We have this sort of problems. It takes your level of, authority to deal with them. Why cannot you outsource this? And I still don't have a good answer. I still believe, somebody could help Vladika. But for him, it wasn't like, you wait there because you are not important, and you are up here because you are really important man. No, for both of them, it didn't matter. So that's something that I think.
See, that again, that's exactly the same thing with Vladika Leon. I'm glad you brought up Vladika Laver, because how many people criticized and judged him, especially during the reunification process, and he never responded once, and it's these little letters that you're describing, thanking people for $5. Could you imagine if every single person, every one of us in ROCOR, started just to send one letter like that a day to someone, just a thank you, I'm thinking about you letter? Again, I don't want to sound cliche or whatever, but we could change ROCOR in 2 weeks, I guarantee you, if we all just tried to be, because that amount of love, the person that gets that letter, they will remember that more than maybe any other letter or experience that they've had in the church. We're so focused on, Vladika Vitaly Maximenko has a great quote, do not be, and don't just appear to be. It's such a powerful quote. It's like, are we just, what are we doing here? Do we have these churches that we have? And Father Jonah brought it up in his interview, a fantastic point. Where are we going from here? Why do these churches exist if we're not going to talk about how do we bring people into the faith? And again, I don't have any answers to those questions, but the people that I meet, similar to the people that are on your site, they have some really fascinating ideas, and you start looking more and more. And it would be really nice if, like you always say, if there was more subordinates, if we can kind of work as teams and not just every parish for themselves.
If we would have a venue when we can sort of brainstorm, when we can come up with ideas, and then it would be up to bishops whether support this or reject it. But sort of we definitely need to have more brainstorming going on in this church. But then you said also one thing that
I think one of the problems too we have
right.
Along those lines, I think one of the problems that we have in ROCOR is a fear of anything new, right? And I don't mean new as in any major changes, kind of no dogmatic changes or anything like that, but just a new way of thinking. For example, when we started this show, one of the things that we ran into that I wasn't expecting was resistance from kind of your own people, and it was just, well, this is wrong and that's wrong. And I remember after, like, I got a few complaint letters from people. How dare you put a picture of Vladika Ilarion on the cover of an envelope reading a book, and there's a cat there, right? And then people thought that this is all staged. This is Photoshop. I'm telling you the truth. That's a real photograph. That's just literally how it is, right? But for some reason, for some people, by doing that, you've somehow destroyed the entire legacy of ROCOR. And I don't I totally understand why people would think that. And that's one of the things that we try to do on the show is welcome criticism. Because anyone who comes at us with that and says, well, my first question is, well, then tell us where we went wrong. You know, what is ROCOR? And the people that kind of, there's some people that initially come at you and they're very aggressive. And then when you ask them, well, can you share some of your insight? Instantly a whole new person opens up. And there's this beautiful dialogue and you start to, you know, to learn from each other. But unfortunately, sometimes, you know, you get, вы ничего не знаете, вы все идет. No, okay, well, but you know, if we all start thinking like that, nothing's ever going to change. You know, okay, we don't know what we're doing. That's why we call it the strangest show on the internet. But we're just trying to kind of figure this out as we go along. And you know, I think we just need a little bit more of that, a little more teamwork, and like my grandfather said, getting over yourself.
Right. I can relate to what, because I don't remember if I watched it, but somehow I agreed with negative comments that we present our metropolitan as fragile, as maybe declining, and sort of emphasizing this kind of. But again, you today you gave me a different angle, that we should not afraid to show our human weakness, because that's what Kau said, сила в немощи совершается. I don't know what would be proper English rendition of it.
Strength is made perfect in weakness.
So maybe
that's honestly, but the thing is that by showing Vladika in that light, right? Your initial reaction is you're making him look weak. But if you pay attention and you read everything we wrote and you watch films that we did on the ski, we're saying the exact opposite. We're trying to show that this man, okay, how was he building the skeet there? If someone asked me, you say, oh, Vladika's building a skeet there. We understand. The reason I'm bringing up the fact that he's an old and frail man, not that Vladika's a frail man, but he's older, is because I don't want people to think that this is some kind of gimmick, that I'm trying to, okay, Vladika came there and he helped out a few times, obviously, so, you know, oh, he's out there every single day cutting 2x4s. No. How was Vladika building that monastery? Like Avad Darafiev, Vladika's favorite book, and this is one of the books he gave me in this process, you know, kind of like, without saying it, he said it, like, you want to figure me out, read this, you know, kind of like, okay, run along. And when I'm reading this, and Avad Darafiev talks about building the house of your soul, that's when it clicked in my head. What Vladika is doing for this skeet is like the most important work there. He's putting a spiritual foundation. He is, because the Отец Tikhon is like, he will be a kind of a mirror image of Vladika. He's, you know, he kind of grew up under his guardianship. Vladika took him under his wing, right? So who do you think Otец Tikhon is going to kind of be like when he's an abbot, when he's for the rest of his life in the church? He's going to be kind of another Vladika that he won. And that's what's so beautiful, is that example, that's the most important work that's happening in the skeet. You know, everything else that's happening is, you know, at first I was just shocked, because Otец Tikhon really is just, how do I describe it? We got 15 trees for him one time delivered. I delivered them myself. They're about 250 pounds a tree. You know, they're 6-foot trees. They're very heavy to move. I brought them there, dropped them, came back the next day, they're already planted. Now explain to me how one man can do all that. And this would happen constantly, over and over again. It's just, you know, you look at this and you're like, this doesn't make sense. All the odds are stacked against them. And yet, quietly, without making a scene, they just go down there little by little, chip away. Why? It's prayer. And that's what I didn't realize, that for, you know, when monks do things, look at Holy Cross Monastery, look at Jordanville, you know, Holy Cross Monastery shouldn't exist. Okay, they had no money. They're basically on the side of a cliff where the whole monastery could just slide off any day. I mean, everything is stacked against them, and yet they're there. And there's some of the strongest, you know, I've never felt closer to God like I did at Holy Cross Monastery, you know, or the skeets, for example. And that's why I'm sitting there looking at this saying, like, there's nothing here. There's a house and a church and a cemetery, but yet inside I feel like everything is here. And when you realize that's all it is, Malitva, Christ. There's really nothing to it. And from, you know, when we start to look at things in that light, everything changes. And that's all we're trying to do in the show. All we're trying to do with everything that we approach, you know, is how do we find him in all of this?
Right. But what also do I like about the show, the way also it appeared to me now that it changes culture of the place, because you are inviting people to conversation, you are open, and whenever person is open, it's always respectful and it's always remarkable. So, and if we would have more things like that, more initiative like that, and even if you will keep going on with your thing, I think it will give impact. Yes, there is some kind of, how to say, mythological Russian church abroad. And I say mythological not in negative sense. Like, I mean, we have like Pushkin. We have Pushkin that is taught in parish school, and we have real Pushkin, how it was in real life. So there are two different processes, but it's okay. We need to have somebody, some kind of heroes like that. So, and same is with what in people's heads about Russian church abroad often, but it's a living church. It should be vibrant church. Otherwise, we're just going to lose people because, I mean, people are not going to stay because of loyalty. In modern day, not having my own children, they ask those, WH questions. Why does this make sense? That's how you communicate. You don't say them because I'm your dad or
We
because
don't
I'm
ask
your
why
father.
enough.
It doesn't work
We
like
don't
that.
ask that question enough.
You
Yeah,
need to
we need to ask why.
rationalize. You need to rationalize. You need to explain, and plus you need to attract. And that's what I hope. Besides bringing money to FFA, that's what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing this dollar component in this. That's something that you see from your end, but from my end, why I want to have this interview, why I want to put it under the spotlight, because I'm seeing it as an interesting phenomenon, as an interesting thing in itself in the life of the Russian church abroad. So I think, I don't know who is going to watch 40 minutes. I hope there will be people who will, but I feel like, we got to stop at this point. So, we'll,
Yeah, we can be here for the next 7 hours.
I can see it. Yeah.
Well, I'll use this. I just want to use it as an opportunity to
Yes,
promote
please.
a very exciting few episodes that we have coming up. We have the most interesting man in ROCOR is going to be on our show. So if you've never met him, we have a very special guest coming up. So I encourage everyone to make sure they look at Faces of ROCOR because, well, they'll have a good opportunity to see exactly what this show is all about as we take a look at the most interesting man in ROCOR.
Right,
Thank
right,
you
right. I just say
so
that
much,
nobody
Archer, for
wants
this
to be that
opportunity.
interesting man. So, right.
Well, we'll explain exactly why, because I'm not just saying that. And, these things, that's kind of our style. It begins almost with a joke. You think, oh, where are they going? What are they doing? But everything always lands very safely back on the ground. And there's very sound logic behind it. So,
Yes, that's that definitely logic is there.